Hi, DataBen here. Today we're going to cover the toolbars in VBA. In the last lesson we looked at all of the individual windows and which ones you needed to set up. Today we're going to go through the toolbar options and what each of the buttons does on each of the toolbars. This is very useful to familiarise yourself even further with the VBA window before you really get into any coding and scripting. First things first, if you're on PC, you will not have all of the toolbars currently open. By default, there are only one or two toolbars open. So to ensure that they're all open, if you go to View and then Toolbars, which I don't have in this Mac version of Excel, and make sure you tick each of the toolbar options. So this is the standard, debug, editor and forms toolbar. So once all of these are open, we're first going to look at the standard toolbar. The first option is to go back to Excel. So if you click this button, it will return you to the Excel window. On Mac, you can use 4 fingers to swipe left or right instead of using this button. And on PC, you can use the Alt and Tab shortcut, which is preferable to pressing the button each time. The next is the Insert Module option. If you actually click the arrow on the right hand side of the main button, you'll see that there's a number of options you can add here. So you'll have module, class module, procedure, and possibly a forms option on PC as well. For our purposes, if we click on module, so a module is just where you can store some code. So it's the basic container for writing some new code that's separate from any individual worksheets. It's the most basic type of container for code, and one that you'll add and use often. There is also an option for class module. This is a more of an advanced type of module where you can start to build your own classes, and a class is an object such as something like a worksheet or the workbook itself, and this is more of an advanced feature that you won't need to add for quite some time, if at all, so you don't need to add this. And then you also have the option to insert a procedure as well. So if you click on Insert Procedure, you'll get some options. And for our purposes, we won't cover what each of these options are for the time being in this familiarization. We'll just add a test subroutine and press OK. And what it'll do is to actually type in the text for you to first start creating some code. And you can actually just type this in yourself. So you don't necessarily need to use this feature, but it's there if you want to use it. So that's how to insert a module and a procedure into VBA. We're going to return to this worksheet next. Okay, the next option is the standard save button, which works the same as on the main toolbar in Excel. And then you've got the standard editing tools such as cut and paste. So cut, copy and paste. And then you have the magnifying glass, which is the usual find option. So the difference with this find is you can actually search in different areas in VBA. So you could search just this procedure, test routine. You could search the entire module, which would be everything that's listed on this page. Or you could search the entire project, which is wherever the code is, wherever it may be, it will find it. So we'll stick to the current procedure, and you've also got options for finding whole words, matching case, and something advanced called pattern matching, which you also won't need to do at this time. So we'll just search for hello, and it just easily finds the text there. You can also replace by clicking the replace button, which changes the option into a find and replace, which is self-explanatory, and you can then click replace to replace any text that you want to do. This is useful if you need to replace a certain word in many areas of VBA at once, especially if you have quite a big project. You might want to find and replace lots of text at the same time. The next option is an undo and redo. So you can undo here. So we've just changed that hello to hi. And then the next option is redo. So I'm going to change it back. So that's the standard undo and redo options. The next option is actually to run the code itself. So you have a play button here. But before we click the play button, a good idea is to actually create something called a breakpoint. So I'm going to type in a new line for this breakpoint. And then you create a breakpoint by clicking on the grey column here where you want the code to stop. So think of it as a pause button. And it will create, if you left click on there, it will create a red circle, which is where the code will break. So this can demonstrate to us that the code is actually running, because otherwise if I pressed play without this, it would run all the way through and you wouldn't even, so quickly that you wouldn't see it, that it was even running. So I'm going to click play now, and there we go, it's paused at this breakpoint. So it's printed, so debug.print is a good way to print some text to the immediate window, and you'll see it's printed the hi world, but it hasn't completed this breakpoint line yet. And if I press play again, it will now run past the pause, the breakpoint, and complete the rest of the code. And there we go, it's printed out breakpoint and printed out the rest of the text there. So I'll just do that again, so it goes to the breakpoint, and it will highlight in yellow the current line that the code is paused on, which opens up the other options, which is you can stop the code early. So in fact, if I run this from the beginning, and you can see that we've now got a stop option, and it just exits out the code without finishing the rest of it. There is also a pause option as well, but you'll find that the code runs so quickly in this case that you won't even have a chance to click pause. But if you're running a very large piece of code, then you'll have the option to pause the code where it is. So that's play, pause, and stop. Next option is design mode, yes or on and off. So if you click on design mode, this is mainly for the PC version of Excel, which is when you're designing user forms. It will give you options to draw buttons and add additional features to your user form. As user forms aren't used in the Mac version of Excel, this doesn't actually do anything for this version apart from disable some options. So we'll just turn that design mode back off. But when you do have design mode on, it should note somewhere in the title that design mode is turned on. So we'll leave that off for the time being. The next option is to activate the project window, which is this window here, but it's already activated, so clicking it doesn't do anything. The next one is the properties window, which is again already activated, so clicking that won't do anything, it already appears. The next option here is called the Object Explorer, and this is a very powerful menu to search. If you click on this, you'll get a pop-up with lots of options on here, which we'll cover in the next video. So the Object Explorer lets you look at every possible command you could run and browse through all the classes and objects in Excel. So if you want to search for absolutely any ability or functionality or procedure in Excel, this is the place to look for it. If you think of it as a library, and we'll cover this in more detail in the next lesson. You can then close this window. And then finally there is the help option, which will redirect you to the Microsoft Help website, which is useful for if you need any further assistance. So that is the standard toolbar. Next is the debug toolbar, which also has the design mode, the play button, the pause, and the stop button as seen on the previous standard toolbar. So we'll move on to the hand icon next, which is for toggling breakpoints. If you click on the line where you want a breakpoint and click the icon, it will highlight a red dot in the grey column, which means the code will actually stop at this point when you press play. So as you can see there, press play and it's highlighted in yellow and printed hello world, the line before it, and it's now paused on the breakpoint which I put there. It's actually quicker to left click in the grey column itself to toggle on and off breakpoints wherever you want. So wherever there is a red circle, the code will pause and exit into VBA if you're in Excel, for example, and highlight the line that you've paused. This is really useful for debugging code and scripts as you go along. So the code is currently run to the second line, which can help us demonstrate the next icons. So the next one is step into, which moves you onto the next line. The shortcut for this on PC is also F8, or on Mac is Command Shift and I, and it will actually move you onto the next line, line by line. The next button is step over. So you can see here what we actually have here is a call to another subroutine. This say hello from subroutine 3 times actually calls this next highlighted block of code. So it would run into this code here. And if I use the next line button, the step into button, the next line would begin here. But actually, if you do step over, it just runs all of the code within the procedure and moves immediately onto the next line within the current procedure. So there we go, it's done all 3 lines at once. If I actually, another useful thing is you can drag the arrow which is executing the code back in time. So I'm going to do that again now and actually do the standard F8 Command Shift I step into, and now you'll see it actually steps into the code line by line. So that's the difference between step into and step over. And I'm going to run the code back again and do step into again, so I'm within this subroutine. And to demonstrate the next one, which is step out. So we can see here, if I do F8, it will do it once. But if I actually just want to run the rest of the code here and carry on to the next line in the main routine, if I do step out, it will exit and finish this routine that I'm in and move back to the parent routine. So there we go. It's continued on to the next line of the parent routine, so it's stepped out of the procedure that it was in. If I did this in the main routine, it would just run, it'd be like pressing the play button. There's nothing else to step back. There's no parent to step back into, so it'll just complete the rest of the routine. So that's step into, which is the one you'll use the most often, F8 Command Shift I, step over, and step out. So we'll actually just finish the code there by pressing play and remove the breakpoint by clicking the red circle or pressing the hand icon on that line. And the next option is for the project window, which is already open. So it actually is just opening this project window, but as we already have it open, it doesn't do anything. Then this button with the exclamation mark does the properties sheet, the properties window, which is also already open in the bottom left hand corner here. So again, clicking it doesn't do anything. And the next option is the watch window, which I don't currently have open. So if I click this, it does indeed open the watch window. I don't have any variables to watch in this section of code, but what it can do, if I just create an integer, a simple integer, so I'm going to call x, I'm going to create x as an integer, and I'm going to give it the number 1000. And then what I'm going to do is then highlight the x, or right click on the x and do add watch. And it will give me some default options, which are fine as the default, just to watch the expression and just press OK. So you can press OK as standard when this comes up, and it'll add a watch here, which what this means is that you can look at the contents of this code as it's running. So we'll set a breakpoint here and press the play button. And as you can see, both here on the watch window and on the locals window, it shows X has been initialized, but it currently doesn't have anything in it. The value within it is 0. But if I step into the next line, the X has now been assigned with the value of 1000, and that actually shows in the watch window. The next icon is called a quick watch, so we'll just stop the code here, and we can do a quick watch here and just click add, which actually does the same functionality as the main watch window. It does the same as the right click add watch and adds the watch. You can actually watch the same, I don't know why you want to, but you can watch the same variable twice, and you can also remove them here as well. So in the watch window itself, you've got the choice to edit the watch, add it, or delete it. And as we've got duplicate now, we'll just delete one of the watches. And that's all of the icons on this toolbar. Next is the editor toolbar. First we have the list properties or methods option. So if we type range A1 first and then type a dot, you'll actually see a number of parameters and possible options you can select based on the range parameter. So you'll see here you can set the value of the range, you can set you can ask for what column that this cell is in, and lots of other different attributes on here. There's far too many to go through, but the actual button on this toolbar does the same thing and brings up this option. But when it automatically appears, this is something called IntelliSense in VBA, where it will guess that you want to see the options based on what you've already written. So I've written range A1, and as soon as I type the dot, it's as if it's the same as pressing the view properties button or list properties button, and it will give me all the possibilities that I can do, helping me scroll through the list and decide what I want to do next. So the next is the list constants option. So I'm going to delete this and use a different example. So I'm going to start with an object called application, which means the entire currently open Excel application. Do a dot, and then we'll get the usual drop down list here. And I'm going to use calculation and then an equal sign, and this next pop-up that appears gives me a number of options. So what I'm doing here is requesting the type of calculation that Excel is running and that I might want to change it. You'll also see that the options sometimes disappear. So you can actually click the list constants button if they do disappear, and they'll reappear to help you choose an option. So the default is automatic, but you could choose manual as well, which means nothing calculates until you ask or press a calculate now button in Excel. So we'll keep this on automatic, and you can actually double click the option that you want or start to type the option. So we'll do equals, so there we go with it appearing, Excel, calculate, and then press tab, and it will auto-complete the rest of the sentence there. So that's a very useful way to auto-complete, and that's using the list constants button. The next option is with the arrow here is the quick info button, and this is a very useful one to actually do some of your own research into Excel and how into VBA and how it works. So for example, if I click calculation here and click the button, it's telling me that calculation is a type of calculation. If I try an application, it's telling me the application is just an application. But if I try it on something like the Excel calculation automatic, it says it's this -4105 and all of these letters. So what it's actually telling me there is underneath underneath the words Excel calculation automatic, as you will know, computers store things as ones and zeros, and underneath this text is an actual setting which is a number rather than the human readable text that you can see here. And if you happen to want to see that number, you can click the quick info button and actually see what that is. So this Excel calculation automatic would be the same as me typing -4105, but of course for us humans to read, it would be very, very difficult to work out what that means, so we have the text instead. So if I did manual and did the same thing with quick info, we get another number, -4135. So every setting, or very, very often, settings underneath will have a number, and sometimes it may be quicker to actually write the number, but most likely you'll use the text. But I do recommend to use the quick info button. So if we do the same again, I'm going to still use this, and let's change the interior of the color of range A1. But before we finish this code, let's do some quick info on here. So the interior is interior, color is a variant, which we don't know what that is yet, but that's fine. And the range will actually tell us we can use more than one argument in here. So it's a real kind of useful tooltip about each of the sections of code you're writing, and it might tell you something that you didn't know about it. So that's quick info, which I took a while to explain there. And the next option is parameter info. So as I was typing the range here, so I want to choose range A1. When I open the brackets, it gives me the possible arguments that I can use here, and it says I can use more than one range here, which is very interesting. So it's telling me the number of arguments I can use, but for now I'm just going to use this cell, the A1, but I could use further cells in here, so I could actually alter more than one cell at the same time, for example. It's giving me the option to do this, and this pop-up which gives me the arguments is the parameter info button. So again, IntelliSense, this automatic pop-up that appears as you're typing, does some of these commands for you, but just in case you or displays some of these pop-ups for you, but just in case it forgets or nothing is appearing, so sometimes you can be writing and say, hey, why is that not showing? And if you click the button, oftentimes the hint will show for you there. The next option is the autocomplete word, which isn't particularly helpful because of the tab autocomplete shortcut we've already covered. So if I do equals Excel calculation automatic and I half type it and click this option, it will try and guess what I'm trying to type. Unfortunately, the guess when you use this button is not very good at all. So it will just try and find almost any even irrelevant options. So for example, if I used Excel by rows here on application.calculation, there are actually only 3 real options, which we've already seen, and if I chose one that wasn't one of these 3, it would fail. So I don't recommend using the autocomplete on here. I recommend using any of the pop-up options that appear. The next option is about indenting. So you may have a little bit of code here. So what you can do is often when you're coding, the way that the code is displayed through white space and for human eyes is to indent it. So it could be clearer if you have things such as loops, which will be coming up soon. That you want to indent these to another level of text. So you just click indent and it moves the text to the right, and you click the button to the left and it moves it back again. So this will move it approximately 1 tab or 4 spaces each time you click on indent. The next button is the breakpoint again, which is the same as the breakpoint on the previous toolbar. They are completely identical. And the next option here with the arrow with the green text is the comment block. When you comment code, it actually means that that code doesn't get run. So if I do a debug.print, this will not be printed, and then I highlight that line. In fact, we'll highlight these two lines and then do indent. You'll see there that it's put the little speech quotes before the text and turned it green. This means that these two lines, we can read them, but they don't do anything. So oftentimes these are used for comments. Okay, maybe to someone else working on your VBA. And if I press play now, it should just only show the bottom text here, which it does. And then if I start taking off the quotes, so I'm going to change this. This will be printed. It displays it below there, and the red text is just taking off the quotes again. So again, this is to put on the quotes, and this is to take off the quotes. And sometimes you want to comment off or comment out big chunks of code at the same time. So that's why it's very useful to use these shortcut keys instead of going, okay, one comment, okay, the second comment, okay, the third comment, and so on. Oh, I need to take it off. Okay, delete that, delete that. It's not very intuitive to do it one line at a time. So you can do entire blocks at a time. The final option here is the bookmark option. So if we want to bookmark a certain piece of code and return to it later, we can do that, and it creates a light blue square next to the line, and then the search options do appear as soon as you've put your first bookmark in. So you can go next, and you'll see my cursor has moved to this bookmark, no matter where it is in the code. It will go to the next one, and if you press previous, it will go to the previous one. And finally, you can take off the bookmarks. So this is very useful when you've got large amounts of subroutines going on, or you have different you'd have different routines running on different worksheets and different modules, and you just get lost, and you always want to return to the same code, maybe repeatedly, but you can never find it. You can use a bookmark to do that. So that's the editor toolbar.